The flagship of the Galactic Empire, Dominion's fist, hung above Earth like a divine hammer awaiting judgment. It shimmered against the black velvet of space, flanked by a crescent of smaller warships whose sleek obsidian hulls drank in the starlight. On its command deck, Grand Negotiator Velix stood with his 6 eyes fixed on the blue planet below. For all its turbulent clouds and green lands, it looked like any other subdeveloped world they had pacified before. Yet, there was a tension in the air he couldn't name, like static before a storm. "This species has no interstellar communication relays," remarked Strategos Menear from behind him, his voice low and metallic. "They have yet to even colonize their moon." Velix nodded, fingers steepled in contemplation. "And yet they've developed projectile-based weaponry capable of orbital reach. Primitive, but spirited." A junior officer stepped forward, tentacles fluttering with urgency. "Our broadcast is ready, sir. Translated into all major Earth dialects. Send it." Across satellites and intercepted internet feeds, the Empire's message poured through. A calm, authoritative voice offering peace through submission. They promised protection, enlightenment, and the knowledge of 10,000 worlds. It was a script that had broken the will of entire civilizations in moments. The response came sooner than expected, brutally brief, patched across every transmission band with unsettling unity. "Earth is not interested in joining your empire. We are not impressed. Leave." Then silence. Not confusion. Not fear. Just dismissal. A murmur spread through the command deck. Velix's head tilted slightly, an ancient gesture among his kind that denoted genuine curiosity. "Replay that," he ordered. The message was played again, unchanged. A few crew members exchanged uncertain glances. One chuckled, nervously. The humans had not asked questions, had not pleaded or threatened. They had simply refused, as if declining a poor sales pitch. "This doesn't align with behavioral models," Menear muttered. "Their species should be exhibiting early-stage awe syndrome. Knees trembling, minds shattered." "Perhaps it's a delay in cognitive response," another offered. "No," Velix said. "They understand us. They're simply choosing defiance." He ordered a second message be prepared, more diplomatic, humbled in tone. But even as he did, a signal erupted from the planet. An orbital warning shot, purely kinetic, blazed across the bow of Dominion's fist, missing it by mere kilometers, but intentional in its trajectory. Enough to say, "We see you." Enough to say, "Don't come closer." A hush fell over the bridge. That had never happened before. It wasn't a technological feat that frightened the crew. It was the precision, the clarity, the sheer gall. "They know who we are," Velix said softly, more to himself than to the others. "And they don't care." He turned, his cloak whispering across the smooth alloy floor. "Bring us back to safe distance. I'll report to the High Conclave." The conclave chamber on the core world pulsed with an ambient hum, the biometal walls responding to the emotions within. Velix stood before the 10 grand minds, their faces projected as fluid holograms suspended in midair. Centuries of conquest weighed in their gaze. "Repeat it," demanded Grand Mind Ortale, his voice brittle with disbelief. Velix obeyed, transmitting Earth's message and the data on the warning shot. The chamber went very still. "They mock us," another mind whispered. "They mock us." "Perhaps they are incapable of understanding scale," suggested Mind Vrose. "They are children playing with fire, unaware of the inferno surrounding them." "Children don't build planetary defense systems," Velix countered. "And children don't unify their voice across every continent to say no without hesitation. This isn't ignorance. It's intent." "You speak of them with admiration," Ortale said, tone sharp. "I speak of them with caution." The minds conferred silently for a moment, linked through their ancient network. When they returned to speech, their consensus was clear. Send another envoy, perhaps more persuasive. Offer incentives. Display only moderate force. Make it clear their resistance is both irrational and fatal. Velix hesitated before replying. "And if they refuse again?" Or Tail's holographic form flickered, eyes narrowing to luminous slits. Then we removed the option to refuse. Back on Earth, the sky remained unbroken. Civilians went about their days with only flickers of awareness that something far beyond their comprehension had arrived. Rumors of alien contact bloomed in online corners, but were drowned out by the sheer noise of human existence. Political arguments, cat videos, late-night conspiracy streams, and offhand jokes about space colonizers getting ratioed. In a subterranean command center buried beneath Icelandic bedrock, the real decisions were being made. "They didn't expect us to say no," said Commander Yara Singh, tapping ash from a cigarette that hadn't been lit in years, just a nervous tick she'd inherited from war movies. "No one ever does," replied her second-in-command, eyes glued to the data feeds. "But they'll be back. Probably with a smile first, then a blade." Singh nodded. "Let them come." A pause. "Why do you think we were so quick to agree on the rejection?" No debate. No bureaucracy. Just one answer. "Because," she said, exhaling sharply, "we've spent all of history fighting each other. And we know exactly what it looks like when someone shows up offering peace in one hand and a gun in the other." The silence that followed wasn't anxious. It was prepared. In the vacuum between stars, the Empire regrouped. For the first time in 1,000 years, fear had entered the margins of their confidence. It wasn't the strength of their adversary that unsettled them. It was their certainty. Humans had not only refused the Empire's hand, they had made it look easy. And far worse, they had made it look like the Empire was irrelevant. Velik stood alone in his chamber, gazing at a holographic model of Earth rotating slowly in the dark. "What are you really?" he murmured, not expecting an answer. But even from across the void, it felt like Earth was smiling. On the third day after Earth's rejection, the Empire sent gifts. Great silver canisters were dropped into Earth's atmosphere, each descending on plumes of blue plasma and landing with the delicacy of dandelion seeds. They unfolded like petals, sleek, glimmering things, and within them, treasures unfurled, samples of alien medicine, crystalline data cores brimming with galactic knowledge, gravity compressors capable of reshaping entire cities. Each bore the same message, encoded in every major language. "We come bearing peace and progress. Accept our hand." The reply was broadcast less than 2 hours later. It was not a government response, nor the voice of any president or prime minister. Instead, a viral video swept across the planetary network, a teenager in a hoodie standing atop one of the alien canisters, holding a cardboard sign that read, "Bro, we said no." The background music was a looped track of distorted alien speech set to a bass drop. The video reached 2 billion views in 24 hours. On board the Dominion's Fist, silence fell like a guillotine. Velix watched the footage without expression. His second heart thudded slow, disbelieving beats. Around him, analysts scrambled to reconfigure psychological models. The message had been clear again. Not just a refusal, but ridicule. The High Command issued a directive: accelerate Phase 2. Deeper cultural integration. Understand their symbols, their systems. Adapt to their thought structures. If humanity could not be persuaded, it must at least be mapped. They sent a new delegation, not of warriors or diplomats, but of cultural historians, technolinguists, and social engineers. Operatives embedded within Earth's networks under digital camouflage, scraping decades of data. What they found made them recoil. Human culture was not one thing. It was everything. Contradictions piled atop contradictions. Philosophies clashed, overlapped, inverted. The same species that produced cathedrals also made horror films about demons. The same minds that cure diseases created apocalyptic simulations for entertainment. Fear, humor, grief, joy, nothing was consistent. Nothing was stable. Worse still was their language. Not the structure, but the elasticity. Words changed meaning by context, by tone, by meme. Irony twisted declarations into paradoxes. A statement like, "We're doomed," could mean terror, resignation, defiance, or amusement. A phrase like, "no cap," carried power that no Imperial translator could decode without referencing 10 layers of slang, subculture, and digital lore. One operative, Agent Z, 47, sent a message to command that simply read, "They do not communicate to exchange information. They communicate to provoke reaction. I fear we are the joke." Velix paced his private quarters, reading these reports until the edges of his vision swam. The humans were not only resisting, they were reshaping the battlefield into one of meaning, and the Empire was stumbling across it like a blind beast. One by one, attempts at connection backfired. A curated hologram of Imperial history, transmitted as an act of goodwill, was re-edited into a satirical animation with dubbed human voices. It portrayed Imperial soldiers as clumsy villains tripping over their own weapons while humans sipped tea and gave sarcastic commentary. The video's title, "When Your Space Empire Ain't Got Plot Armor." The Empire retaliated with silence. Then with warnings. Then with minor demonstrations of power, low-orbit flybys, sonic booms across military installations, gravity pulses over ocean surfaces. The humans responded with a coordinated meme storm, triggering millions of AI chatbots to flood the Empire's channels with mock translations. Every threat became a joke. Every attempt at intimidation a meme. Their resistance had become decentralized, organic, and viral. But not all humans were laughing. In the halls of Earth's defense coalition, the mood was shifting. Commander Yara Singh studied the latest transmissions in grim silence, noting the change in Imperial behavior. The aliens were growing quiet, not retreating but recalculating. "They're starting to understand we don't operate like a single hive," said her aide, Lieutenant Merrick, pulling up a graph of psychological analysis trends. "They're trying to categorize us, to isolate leadership structures." "They won't find any," Singh replied, "because we don't have one. Not the way they expect." "Then, how do we hold the line?" Merrick asked. "By letting them keep looking," she said. "By staying unpredictable. If we try to formalize our resistance, we become targetable. Our greatest strength right now is confusion." Elsewhere, in a back alley in Sao Paulo, an Imperial agent had gone rogue. Assigned to infiltrate Earth subcultures, he had instead fallen in love with them. With the music, the chaos, the absurdity. He played bass now in a local punk band. They called him Zeta. He wore eyeliner and screamed about freedom into crowded nightclubs. Command had lost contact weeks ago. He wasn't the only one. Among the Imperial fleet, morale wavered. Soldiers whispered of the humans' psychological warfare. One trooper confessed he hadn't slept in 3 nights after watching a human movie called Terminator. Another broke protocol and streamed a 24-hour compilation of human prank videos, then requested reassignment, citing existential dread. Velix convened with the minds again, his tone subdued. "We are bleeding credibility. Not because we are weak, but because they see us as ridiculous." "They are primitive," Ortale replied, almost defensive. "They are ungovernable," Velix corrected. "And I fear they will teach others to be the same." The minds paused. Beneath their silence was unease. "And yet," Velix added, "they are not united. They are many voices, but one sentiment. Do not tread here." Ortale's image flickered. "Then we must make them united. One way or another." A signal was authorized. The Empire would begin a new phase. No more gifts. No more analysis. A show of force was coming. On Earth, Commander Singh read the intercepted signal. Her expression did not change. "They're done asking questions," she said. Merrick swallowed hard. "So, what do we do?" She looked out across the world from her digital map room, where red icons flared and disappeared like sparks on a fuse. "We show them that Earth isn't a fortress," she said. "It's a wildfire." Far above, the stars stirred. The Empire arrived without pretense. No offers, no parables about peace. Just warships. 100 of them, arranged in a brutal phalanx across Earth's upper orbit, like a noose of black steel. From the heart of this armada, the Dominion's fist loomed once more, its hull aglow with charged weapon arrays. No announcements were made. The time for dialogue had passed. Commander Yara Singh stood in the Situation Core beneath Iceland, her gaze fixed on the translucent tactical dome that displayed Earth's exosphere. The ships were beautiful in the way forest fires are beautiful, indifferent, consuming, inevitable. "They think we've been stalling," she said, voice low. "That we're scrambling behind the chaos. They don't understand. We've been watching." Lieutenant Merrick stood beside her, his breath tight. "Orders, ma'am." "Wait." In silence, they waited. 5 minutes. 10. The Imperial ships held their position, menacing but motionless. Then the first moved. A spike in gravitational activity pulsed near the atmosphere over the Pacific. A low-orbit platform flickered, then blinked out, its systems fried. The Empire was testing, hunting for soft points, mapping Earth's silence, interpreting it as weakness. Commander Singh smiled. "Activate Grid Phase 1. Across Earth's orbit, previously dormant satellites spun to life. They weren't offensive weapons in the traditional sense. They were mirrors, relays, amplifiers, designed not to destroy, but to distort. Beams of concentrated light flashed between them, crisscrossing into a network of false telemetry. The Empire sensors reported nonsense, fleets where there were none, weapons arrays stretching from polar caps to equators. The illusion was perfect, maddening. Velix sat at the center of the fist, encased in the cathedral-like nerve core of the ship, and stared at the chaos unfolding on his displays. Ship signatures appeared, vanished, multiplied. Terrain blinked in and out of coherence. Target locks failed. Communication scrambled. It was not a technological assault. It was psychological. A war of perception. "It's a trap," his aide whispered, blinking nervously. "No," Velix replied. "It's a story. They are writing fear into our systems." He ordered a forward advance anyway. The first shots came not from Earth, but from the Fist's second wave. One of the Empire's flanking vessels fired preemptively at a phantom Earth ship, an illusion projected from one of the satellites. The beam struck empty space. 2 others followed, and then the command structure buckled under confusion. That was when Earth struck back. From deep within the Pacific Trench, a series of seismic displacements triggered the release of submerged launch canisters, unregistered, unmapped, and completely off-book. Hypersonic missiles broke from the water like knives. They didn't aim for ships. They aimed for blind spots, for predictable reaction zones, places where the Empire's ships would shift instinctively under pressure. And they did. Right into the fire. 2 cruisers fell in under a minute. Not crippled, destroyed. Gone. In blossoms of pressure and flame. On Earth, the world held its breath. In the war room, Merrick's voice was barely audible. "They're falling." "They're hesitating," Singh corrected. "That's worse." Above, the Fist reeled. Panic rippled through its corridors not because of losses, but because the pattern no longer made sense. Human attacks did not follow a doctrine. There was no chain of command they could trace, no singular center of logic to predict. It was like being inside a burning house with no walls. Everything shifted too fast. Then came the final blow, not physical, but informational. Every screen across the fleet, every interface, every mental uplink was hijacked. A single broadcast pulsed through the void. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even official. It was a human voice, calm and clear. "Hey there, space tyrants. You're trespassing. We asked nicely. We're done asking. You can leave now. Or you can find out how many bad decisions we're willing to make before breakfast." Then came a song. Loud, discordant, human. Something old, metal, maybe punk, full of screaming and chaos and raw defiance. The Empire's neural translators buckled trying to parse the intent. Soldiers tore out headsets. Officers howled at text to shut it down. But it was everywhere. And then the laughter started. Not human, imperial. From within the fleet, someone cracked. An officer. Then another. The tension, the absurdity, the sheer impossibility of the situation. Giggles turned to gasps. A cascade of psychological ruptures began. They weren't used to being afraid. They weren't used to being mocked. And they had never, ever been both at once. Velix stood rigid in the eye of the storm. He understood at last. The humans had never planned to win in the conventional sense. They weren't trying to overpower the Empire. They were trying to infect it with unpredictability, with emotion, with disobedience. This was not war. It was a cultural virus. And it was spreading. He issued the command to withdraw. No one questioned it. The ships peeled away from Earth like smoke on the wind, limping, disoriented, hollow. On Earth, the skies cleared. In the war room, Commander Singh finally sat down. The tension left her face in a slow, invisible exhale. She didn't cheer. She didn't smile. She simply nodded. "Monitor for any return activity," she said. Merrick stared at her. "We made them run." "No," she replied, her voice grave. "We made them think." Above the atmosphere, a single satellite spun slowly, transmitting one final Earth message into the void. Humanity does not kneel. It would bounce for light years, echo through channels, become rumor and legend among the stars. And far away, in the cold shadow of a disgraced empire, the name, Earth, began to mean something new. Something terrible. Something free. The stars were quiet in the months that followed. Where once Imperial patrols had swaggered across sectors with unchecked authority, now there was absence. Radio silence. Ghost lanes. Worlds that had once flown the banner of the Empire lowered it quietly, without ceremony. A strange kind of rot had begun. Not loud, not violent, but insidious. The collapse of certainty. Velix stood in the dim observatory aboard the Dominion's Fist, which now served more as a drifting relic than a flagship. They'd returned to Empire space in formation, battered but intact. The official report called it a tactical deferment. But no one used that phrase anymore. Not after the recordings leaked. He had become a symbol, not of failure, but of danger. Of questions that couldn't be unasked. Officers gave him a wide berth. The conclave had fallen silent. He wasn't sure if it was shame or fear. Outside the viewing pane, the light of a binary star system glinted coldly. Velix didn't look at it. His thoughts remained with Earth. It wasn't over. It had never really begun. They hadn't conquered humanity, but more importantly, they hadn't understood them. And now that lack of understanding had begun to spread like a contaminant through the Empire's very structure. Protocols were questioned. Orders delayed. The chain of command, once sacred, now flickered with doubt. He retrieved a file from his personal databank. Audio. Just one word, no. The voice of Earth. Simple, unyielding, unapologetic. The Empire had faced uprisings before, of course. Whole planets resisting occupation. But they had always cracked eventually. The key had been understanding what the enemy valued, then corrupting it, bargaining with it, or destroying it. But Earth had valued contradiction. It thrived on chaos. It found identity in refusal. How do you negotiate with something that doesn't want consistency? Even now, they didn't speak with one voice. No global leader had risen to proclaim victory. No demands were made. No celebratory broadcast. They had simply gone back to their lives, as though they hadn't just stared down a galactic empire and won. Velix found that terrifying. He wasn't alone. Across fringe systems, rumors whispered like wind through abandoned corridors. Pirates and rebels spoke of Earth as a kind of myth. The unrolled world. The fire that couldn't be caged. Smugglers traded human music like contraband. Hackers on technocratic worlds wore hoodies with Earth slogans. And worse, Imperial citizens had begun asking questions. If Earth could say no, why not us? If the Empire could retreat once, could it retreat again? The Conclave issued strict communication bans. Information about Earth was to be suppressed. All references purged. But it was too late. Humans had planted the idea, small, viral, and indigestible, that authority could be denied. Elsewhere, in a modest apartment somewhere in Mumbai, Yara Singh sipped lukewarm tea and watched birds flit past her window. She'd retired. Officially. Quietly. No parades. No plaques. She had turned down every offer for interviews, medals, or political advancement. The world didn't need a war hero. It needed forgetfulness. But she couldn't forget. Every now and then, she'd check the Black Line, an encrypted, off-record communication channel that had once served as Earth's internal defense relay. It was mostly quiet now. A few signals here and there. A watch list of Imperial movement. Someone in Nigeria reported flickers of alien probes. A fishing vessel off the Chilean coast claimed to have intercepted an unregistered broadcast in an unknown dialect. She archived the messages without comment. They were not signs of threat. Not yet. Just the universe watching Earth a little more carefully now. On the other side of the galaxy, a different kind of message was being written. A small, previously unnoticed moon had declared its independence. It hadn't fought. It hadn't negotiated. It had simply stopped paying attention to the Empire. No banners were burned. No weapons fired. They just turned off their beacons. Others followed. The Empire tried to crack down. They sent dreadships, made displays. But the effect was different now. The people no longer feared destruction as they once had. After all, Earth had survived. Not because it was strong, but because it refused to play by the rules. And now, others were learning to rewrite their own. Velix received a message from an unmarked source weeks later. It was short. A human child, maybe 10 years old, sitting in front of a camera, grinning. Behind him, a hand-drawn sign read, "Y'all gonna try again?" Velix watched it 3 times. He didn't laugh. He closed the message and stood slowly, his joints aching in a way they never had before. The Empire would try again. Of course they would. Institutions that large don't die with a single failure. But he suspected Earth had changed something permanent. Not a victory, a fracture. Back on Earth, the world kept turning. People fell in love, fought over taxes, binge-watched shows. Few spoke of the invasion. It had become a meme, a political talking point, a line in schoolbooks some argued about. But for those who had stood on the precipice, who had stared into the abyss of an empire and not blinked, it had become something quieter. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful weapon in the universe is not firepower. It's the courage to laugh and the will to disobey. The stars were no longer silent. A signal pierced the void, fragmented, faint, but undeniably human. It bounced between derelict satellites and deep space beacons long thought inactive, echoing across the old war-scarred channels like a ghost. Not a distress call. Not a warning. Just music. A lone acoustic guitar, a voice humming an old Earth folk song, raw and imperfect. Velix received the transmission aboard a new ship, Celestial Authority, constructed in the Empire's renewed initiative to reclaim its presence. This ship was leaner, more efficient, designed not for domination but strategic deterrence. But Velix knew better. This was fear shaped into metal. The humans had taken nothing from the Empire, no territory, no resources, but the Empire had lost everything intangible. Its certainty, its aura, its myth. Now they scrambled to reclaim it. A show of relevance. A stage play of dominance. Yet even here, even now, Earth still haunted them. Velix didn't share the transmission with his crew. He let it play in his quarters, eyes closed, remembering the shape of defeat not as a single moment, but a sequence of irreversible realizations. They had not lost because humans were stronger. They had lost because humans had made them irrelevant. They hadn't broken the Empire. They had made it absurd. On Earth, the transmission was old, recorded years ago by a resistance coder named Lien Reyes, who had gone off-grid after the war. No one knew where she was now, or if she was alive. Her music had surfaced in back channels, mostly ignored. But somehow it had made its way back into the stars, and that mattered. Commander Singh, pulled briefly from retirement to advise a newly formed Earth diplomatic front, sat at a quiet bench overlooking an overgrown park. A simple interface tablet rested on her lap. The message from the stars had reached her only hours before. She listened to it without commentary. Merrick, now director of off-world security, had called her the moment it came through. "It's bait," he said. "The Empire wants a response. They already got one, she replied. Years ago. But they're watching again. They want to know if we've grown complacent. We haven't, Singh said simply and ended the call. She tapped the tablet and watched the playback again. Lien's voice was scratchy, almost uncertain. The song had no sharp message. Just humanity. A kind of reckless openness that couldn't be faked. And Singh understood, with the same clarity she'd felt the moment Velix's fleet had turned back. This war was no longer about power. It was about meaning. Somewhere beyond the outer rings, deep in contested sectors where the Empire's grip had thinned to whispers, another signal appeared. This one was sharper, binary-laced, fast-pulsed. A request for contact. Not from Earth, but from a colony world that had once served as an imperial shipyard. Now they were broadcasting Earth's frequencies, mimicking slang, even dressing their envoys in stolen fragments of human media. Earth had become a language. Not just a place, but an idea. A viral template for resistance. Merrick called an emergency session of the diplomatic front. Singh attended remotely, her presence sparing but weighty. The Empire is hemorrhaging control, Merrick said. They've retreated from 6 systems in the last cycle alone. And what do we do? Asked one of the junior representatives. Offer support? Weapons? Do we guide them? No, Singh said quietly, silencing the room. We let them find their own way. That's the point. But we're the spark, someone insisted. No, she corrected. We were the match. But they're their own fire now. Above a dark moon known as Rax's 7, Velix stepped foot onto the soil for the first time since the Earth campaign. It was cold and gray and littered with the husks of Empire watchtowers, now overtaken by vines and graffiti. He walked alone, no entourage, no armor. At the heart of the colony stood a monument, not to Earth, but to refusal. It was made of broken comms equipment, a cracked screen still displaying the word "No" in flickering red. Around it, locals had left offerings, drawings, books, strange trinkets, and sometimes words. He read one etched in crude paint. We are not yours. Velix stood before it for a long time. There were no orders to be given here. No troops to command. The Empire hadn't fallen. Not yet. But something foundational had cracked, and it was growing. He didn't feel rage anymore. He felt something far colder. Recognition. Because deep beneath every empire is the belief that it will last forever. That it is not merely powerful, but necessary. Earth had shown that belief to be fiction. And fiction, once seen for what it is, cannot be made whole again. Back on Earth, night fell over the city. Singh stood on her balcony, watching a group of teenagers dance in the street below to music that pulsed from a cheap speaker, some hybrid of alien rhythm and Earth distortion. Laughter echoed between buildings. The sky overhead was clear. No warships. No fleets. Just stars, watching. She didn't smile. But she stayed a while. Because peace wasn't a state. It was a choice made again and again. And as long as humanity remembered how to laugh, to question, to refuse, then the Empire, no matter how far it reached, would never truly win. Not here. Not ever.